All right, everybody. Dark Silver here with a really good buddy of mine. A lot of you guys probably already know him, especially if you follow my page, and he's done some interviews as well. So I'm here with Kyan, and in my opinion, this guy. I guess I was just telling him I want to do something a little bit different with his interview than the same old boring robotic stuff. I try to do that with everybody, but we're going to talk about some interesting things here. So, the first thing I want you to introduce yourself and just let the people know, just a tiny bit about what you have going on in your yard and your program, and what dogs that you're working with.
Yeah, yeah. Um, my name's Kyan. I'm from the border of South Carolina and Georgia. I'm about to turn 40, and I've been obsessed with pit bulls and Amstaffs and Staffordshire Bull Terriers since I was a child. Um, First pit bull type dog I purchased, I called them I wanted shit bulls for $100. When I was 16, I literally got my driver's license and I went and gave somebody $100 for a black brindle
we've
shit
all
bull.
we've all been there.
Yeah, and I think I was able to keep it away from my parents for about 4 days, and they made me do a about face and take that shit right down. Well, anyways, I end up getting a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. I still lived at home with my folks. They didn't want me to have a large breed. And so my dad was like, okay, Old English Bulldog, Staffordshire Bull Terrier, your two choices. And my dad's a dog guy. And he was like, I'm going to tell you what I would do. I'd get a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. And this is why. Old English Bulldog, we're talking late 90s here. Oh one, I'm sorry. Oh one. Old English Bulldog, really 20 years old at that point, right? You had what, three strains or
Right,
three
they're
bloodlines?
fairly new
Yeah,
at that time.
fairly new. Staffordshire Bull Terrier has been around for 150 years at that point, give or take. So, and plus, it was more of what I wanted was a bull and terrier dog, not just a
A
bulldog.
bulldog, right?
And so I ended up getting a Staffordshire Bull Terrier. He was I used to take him to hog catching competitions. He was a certified catch dog, had a WB1, which is a wild boar one. I think that meant it was a pig over 150 pounds, or at least 150 pounds. Having mine, Staffordshire Bull Terrier, my male was 37 pounds in shape. Um, and when I got my house, I actually was like, I want to get an Amstaff, man. A little bigger, I mean, guys always want bigger dogs,
Right.
at some point. And it's funny, the older I got, I'm going back towards the smaller dogs at
Hmm.
this point. But so actually, I've always gone to AKC shows, and I ended up going to an AKC show locally, and I saw my dog's father. His name was Edelholz Champion Hard Cash. His bloodline was half noble and half woods, and he was bred and championed out at Edelholz Kennels. I saw him at a dog show, and I was like, I've got to. Called her up. I actually went up to the handler and I said, "Hey, I'm not trying to bother you. I need a dog off of that dog."
Hmm.
And I believe I sent Carol, who I still talk to probably once a month. I sent her a deposit immediately, and I was. Uh, she has been. I've had many people who have guided me as far as knowledge, or given me knowledge, hit me the game, whatever you want to say.
Right.
And she has always been a consistent mentor slash friend. I've actually had a couple of dogs from her over the years, and um, but Memphis was the first one I got, and he's pretty much the cornerstone of anything I've ever done breeding wise. Not everything has had him. Well, I have to sit and think, but pretty much, I mean, he's a building block like him and my buddy's dog, New Vision Kennels to Cal, on the bully end of it.
Okay.
Um, but so that's what I've done since basically Memphis was '05. So from '05 to um, from '05 to really now, our last breeding I did was 2 years ago, and I actually just did another breeding with a friend of mine, um, his dog, and so that's where um, that's where we're at today.
Okay. So it's interesting to hear you say what you just said, because I don't, when I talk to people just in general, not necessarily when I'm doing interviews with them, but just in general, a lot of the guys, they don't, I guess they don't understand what a program is or what a stud dog really is. Is you what you
Hmm.
just described was the true definition of a stud dog. Is that dog is, like you said, was the cornerstone. Everything that you did was centered mainly around that dog and another dog, and that's a true program. You know, you
Hmm.
saw something in that dog that you liked, and you wanted to make sure that you'd be able to be able not only to produce it, but to reproduce it so that you could continue to have it on down the line. And you don't get that a lot of days. I mean, these days, a lot of guys are, they've got a nice looking male. He's not proven, you know, maybe at the time. And then they'll breed him to this female, to that female, to this female. And they don't really ever do any line breed or anything like that with their dogs. And then they're kind of complaining, or the clients start complaining that their dogs aren't showing the same types or the same phenos of what they're
Hmm.
seeing in their on their pages and their pictures and things like that. Um, so obviously, for you to be running a program like that, like you said, I mean, you've been doing this a long time. So from how have things progressed in general from what you've seen, just in the canine world in general, from when you first, but I mean, and when I say when you first really got into it, I mean when you first really started breeding until now. Have you seen a progression, or are you seeing more of a digression, or is it just stagnant? Like how do you see that?
I think the seesaw is completely
It's just flat,
parallel
huh?
with
It's
the
not.
ground, and I say that because the way I can describe it, and I think that, well, I know you're like me, is you got two ways of going into dogs, and it's just like learning a language. I would rather go to Brazil already knowing Portuguese than you throw me into fucking Rio and say, all right, we're going to do the immersion course. You know what I mean? And I think that you and I were so students to the game of the breeds that interested us before we actually got the breed, that we knew what we were getting into.
Right,
We
right,
knew about bloodlines. We knew how to speak the language before we got to the land where the language is spoken.
for sure.
And so I feel like the internet is a wonderful tool, but I feel like it's also a tool that lazy people can use to not have to do the work. I don't understand someone who doesn't want to learn about what they're trying to maintain, make better, or what they have. I would love to have a Central Asian Shepherd. I don't need a fucking 200-pound killer in the backyard. And
Right.
I'm not saying they are, but they're, you know what I'm
No,
saying?
they're right. No, they're
You have to find out what breeds are bred for in order to properly nourish their development and
right,
not put them in a failing situation.
right.
And I mean that's kind of what I feel is like I don't understand people who don't want to learn about. I've been obsessed since I was a child, and I don't get if you're not obsessed about like this is my hobby, you know what I mean? If you don't, if you're in it half-ass, why are you in it?
Right. No,
You
I
know,
agree. I agree. Yeah, I think, and you may or may not agree on this. I think a lot of what you just said also, at least half of it, is coming from lack of due diligence on the client's parts as well, where it's starting to make the breeders get lazy because they're like, well, this guy, because like you said, when we were coming up, we didn't have the internet. Well, we
yeah,
had it. Well, it didn't come around to us until like 94, 95, but it wasn't anything like it is now. You try to
hmm,
research American Pit Bull Terrier or Pressa
yeah,
Canary or
yeah,
whatever. You weren't going to get a lot of information. So we were buying Stratton books or ordering books from overseas, and we'd have to sit there with our highlighters and pen and pads and take notes in the books all day, like you said. And I think now that someone can just get online, type something in, and they read the first 5 lines of something, and then they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's what I want." And now a lot of the breeders are just like, "Well, I gotta sell puppies."
yeah,
So I'm not really going to ask too many questions. Only question I really want to know is, do you have the money and can you take care of shipping?
yeah,
And that's what I see a lot of now. So it's like the buyer isn't even doing the work for the most part.
yeah,
They're just doing the basics, or they read the first source of info that comes up online rather than, like you said, like you hit the nail on the head, dude. Before I personally ever owned an American Pit Bull Terrier, because where I lived in Maryland, we couldn't even have them. And I
yeah, yeah.
remember a story. Me and my aunt were trying to go buy an Amstaff from a lady way out in Maryland, and we drove all the way down there. Got there. I mean, she had probably 30 dogs out on her yard, and
Hmm.
I thought we were going to leave with the dog. My aunt wanted a dog, but we couldn't get the dog because my uncle, her husband at the time, worked for the county, and the county had a ban on bully breeds at the
Yeah,
time. So he's like, "Nah, you can't bring that dog in here." And then I'm working for the county, nah, 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 nah. But like you said, by that time, I knew everything there was to know about that dog. So I'm sitting there talking to the lady, having a full-fledged conversation at 15 years old, with
yeah,
this lady who was in her 40s and had been doing this way longer than I had. As far as with that breed specific thing. I mean, she's got a kennel. I come off a farm working farm dogs, and we were breeding mutts just to work in the fields and whatnot.
yeah, yeah,
So I think a lot of that's where that comes from. So with I think another topic I definitely want to touch on. So when you decided that you were going to go with the bull and terrier breeds, um, I know just from my personal experience, like it's hard to find a good Staffordshire Bull Terrier. Like
hmm.
even today, like it is hard to find a good Staffy Bull. Like how long did it take you to source the actual Staffordshire Bull Terrier that you wanted?
I got lucky when I was a kid. Uh, Down here, they have a paper called the Iwana. It's a classified swap meet paper. Goes about 80 miles in a circle around us. But I'm also 2.5 hours from Atlanta, and since we're on the border, and I'm actually in South Carolina, but since we're on the border, I get the state paper, which is the South Carolina paper, but I also get the Atlanta
The
Journal
Atlanta
Constitution. And I got the Atlanta Journal Constitution, and there was a Staffordshire Bull Terrier ad. Just got lucky on that end. The thing that I actually did this time was I've been talking to a buddy of mine for years, or became a buddy of mine up in Steadfast, Stafford's, and it really intrigued me because his dogs are more they look good, but they're more performance oriented dogs. Yeah, I mean, and what I mean by that is he goes hunting with them. He works them. They live on a ranch, and he's done all kinds of frisbee events and stuff like that. But the thing about it is, he is just such a wealth of knowledge. And I had been out of Staffordshire Bull Terriers. I mean, I've always paid attention, but kind of at a distance since mine passed away. But his dogs actually go back to my dog's father, right? So Lucy, the little Staffy bull bitch I have right now that's 8 months old, is like 4 times the dog I had's father. You see what I'm saying? So my dog Murphy, his father was Mime Staff's Game Boy. Well, even though it's 15 generations ago, it's back there 4 times. He's line bred and has some of the finest performance bred dogs in in the country. I mean, in my opinion, and I've done what I feel is like my due diligence. Not saying he's the only kennel, because he's not, but I personally like his stuff. He's a real steward of the breed, and he's a historian. He's just such a wealth of knowledge, and really helps me out when it comes to getting me back with pedigrees and such.
Mhm.
Um, I'm trying to turn off the volume on the freaking TV. Sorry,
It's all good.
but he, some of the bloods had. There's been some Georgia blood, old Georgia blood, and that's not the name of it, but there's Dynamite, Intrepid, Nozak, Don Nellis. This is all stuff that's back in the pedigree, but he's been breeding Staffordshire Bull Terriers as long as I've been messing with Amstaffs and American Bullies. He's been doing that. You know what I mean? And like I said, it's a good thing because they're not so popular.
Right.
Like you said, I mean, it's kind of like the pendulum can swing any way with popularity.
Right.
And if you're a multicolored or multi-pattern breed, you can get fucking in trouble real quick. I mean, sometimes I'm like, the only saving grace for the Rottweiler is I'm not saying that they don't come in dilutes. I'm sure one might pop out here or
Yeah.
there.
Every now and then. Yeah.
But I mean, breeds that only come in one color, they're just not subject to genetic manipulation for
Right.
financial gain.
Right.
You know what I mean?
No, for sure. So what's your experience with the American Bully, um, either past to present? Because me and you came up around the same time when Dave started. Initially
Yeah,
that dog was Amstaff American Pit Bull Terrier, and that was it. And now
yeah,
it's we don't know what it is anymore. I mean,
yeah. I
it's
I I don't say this, and I'm trying to pick my words because I wasn't around. You know what I mean? But I was paying attention to what was going on. And I mean, I came around '04, '05, like, and funny enough, I got my first Staffordshire Bull Terrier, and this is going to tie in. I got my first Staffordshire Bull Terrier. The breeder hooked me up with a guy from my town who had a Staffordshire Bull Terrier from him. This guy is 20 years older than me, old old game dog guy. He just wanted a smaller dog. Well, I got my actual doctorate in pit bulls from an old game dog guy that
Mhm.
messed with iron line
Okay.
and
Dan, that Norwich stuff.
yeah,
Okay.
and then Red Boy was from South Carolina. And so Red Boy and David Tantblood was very popular in this area. Well, anyways, you know, I got hooked up with him, and I was always reluctant to mess with quote unquote what's deemed now bully blood because I remember we're the same age going into Dog World magazine and I see a picture of New Trojans Monster G, Dominion's Dominator, and looking at him and it says New Trojans Monster G, something, something, something. I believe it said 86 pounds, and looking at the loose flues on the face,
Hmm.
and then looking at Dominion's Dominator and saying, damn, that's a cool dog. But it says, I think he was either 10 or 13 months old and 110 pounds. And I was like, Well, I know a breed doesn't change like that in two
Right.
breedings.
Right. Exactly.
And I knew this at 15. Like, I'm not the smartest when it comes. There's dog people that know a whole lot more than me, and I am always willing to learn, just like you are. But I can look at this and says this does not fit the standard of what's been going on here for the
For
past
for, for
90
decade for decade.
years.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so always trying, if I was going to merge into the American Staffordshire Terrier line, I wanted to make sure that I protected I say protected myself, kept away from any semblance of this new popular blood that I deemed questionable
Hmm.
heritage wise. And so the first question I called when I said, I don't want any quote unquote what was people are calling, this new big blue bully stuff.
Hmm.
And I said, and she said, I have one of those dogs, but it was an outcross. It was a breed back, and I got a puppy back. That's not even involved on what you're looking at. And I said, okay. And that's how I ended up with Memphis. Now, what ended up happening was there was about three. I'm wrong. I think there was about 5 or 6 Razor's Edge dogs that were AKC registered.
Hmm.
So a lot of them were just UKC,
Right.
but there was a small fraction. Throwing Knuckles, his
Yeah, I was gonna
sister
say throw.
Rage.
Right.
I think there was a sister named China, and then you had a dog like, I believe it might have been a dog named Romeo, and then it goes back to, you had Shane and De Niro. There was a small, so I would say less than 10 dogs, and I could be wrong. It could be a few more, but the majority of them, from my knowledge, stemmed from that buckshot, uh, rage stuff. Coming down
Hmm.
short shot, and I was interested because I was wanting to stay AKC at the time.
Hmm.
By this time, I had some friends that had bully dogs and had, you were around back then. Gray Line, Gotti Line wasn't really trying to fuck with mixing with Razor's Edge, and vice
Right.
versa. And God forbid you mix a Camelot dog and that bitch, people would bust a head gasket. If you mix big red blood with short, stocky blue blood,
Hmm.
they're gonna die of an aneurysm. And but I always was just interesting in outcrossing and see what comes up. Um, and so I got Memphis. I actually bought my first bitch, and it was a dog from Eddie Phelan, Turpin's Blue Trouble. It was a line bred Turpin's Blue Trouble female. The mom was an A7 Ace weight pool champion in the ADBA. And he was a big weight pool guy. He actually UKC'd Memphis for me at a year old. You could take an AM staff and get him UKC evaluated to see if he met the qualifications to be a UKC pit bull. If he did, you could go ahead with the process and get your dog registered UKC. That's how I got Memphis UKC. Well, I got that bitch. She didn't work out, but I so I was like, well, man, I'm just going to get one of these AKC Edge dogs. And I'd done a couple of bully breedings with Memphis to some Edge dogs, Edge that might have been 7/8 Edge, 1/8 Gotti or something, a Peterson dog. Um, and, just doing a couple breedings with him, seeing what I like and what I don't like, and just keeping one, placing one out with a friend. And it was really, I hadn't planned on going UKC here on my personal yard, but um at at I think '08, '09, I had bought another Amstaff from Meadowhouse Kennels off of Memphis's half brother to Memphis's on the adjacent sides half sister. So that was perfect. I was like,
Right.
it's line bred,
Right.
opposite. But I went and at 08, 09, the UKC just started freaking out on bully people, like not sending them papers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I get it, but you should have chopped down the tree when it was just a seed and not when it was the freaking Amazon. And
Right.
that's what they were doing, but they halted single registration for American Staffordshire Terriers and ADBA pit bulls to go into the UKC. So they just cut off everything completely to the UKC for a year or two. And while I kind of got it on the bully standpoint on like, hey, they're trying to keep their shit pure, it pissed me off because I bought this Amstaff that I was going to get UKC that a year, and now they closed the fucking registration. Well, I decided to go another route, and I was just like, man, I have all these nice UKC dogs around me. People are wanting to use him, and it was just like, I think I'm gonna stick with some of these UKC dogs and give them a try. Since Memphis is already UKC, I can always come back to the AKC and get a female Amstaff if you know what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
And but there was a lot of nice stuff around here, in my opinion. And so yeah, I mean that's kind of where everything
Yeah,
started for.
you've got more experience with that particular breed than I do. I see one thing that I like to do before I give my opinion, whether it's negative or positive on a breed. I like to own a couple of them.
Yeah,
And I owned a dog directly off of Dave's yard, a blue male, and he was actually a pretty nice dog. And then I had one of these pocket
yeah,
American bullies, and undoubtedly that was the top three, one of the worst dogs I've ever owned in my
yeah,
life.
yeah,
But and she was out of South Carolina, actually. I can't remember the kennel name. I got her when I was in Maryland, right before I moved to Colorado. I bought her from a Salvadorian guy way up in Montgomery County, and they had just been breeding her so much that I couldn't even do anything with her if I wanted to, and I didn't know that coming into it. Plus, she had skin issues.
yeah,
She was a blue tri. I mean, she was beautiful. I mean, she was beautiful. She couldn't walk a quarter of a mile without me having to pick her up and then taking her back home. She just couldn't do it.
yeah,
But I did notice when he brought me the papers that she had the what is it, the ABKC, and then she had UKC papers, and then one said American Bully, the ABKC, and then the UKC had her registered as an American Pit Bull Terrier. And I said, I'm looking and I'm like, this is why people want to keep trying to group an APBT with this American Bully. I said, when you see stuff like this, and people are like, oh, I got American Pit Bull Terrier, and I'm looking at the dog, and I'm like, dude, that's not an American Pit Bull Terrier. Um,
yeah,
and so this is my opinion, and I'd just like to get your opinion on it. And I used to think that it was something that Dave had done, but when I had put more research into it, I saw that Dave really didn't have anything to do with what happened to the American Bully. I guess after, he formed the registry and he started making all that money, he kind of just kind of fell off and was like, yeah, whatever. They can do whatever they want to do. And then the dog consistently got tiny and huge at the same time. You know what I mean? Like it just went two different ways immediately. But as I look at these types, I guess we can call them that. Do you kind of feel that those dogs were trying to replace like the American Bulldog, the Staffordshire Bull Terrier, the American Pit Bull Terrier, the Amstaff, and the English Bulldog in a sense? Do you kind of feel like that's what they were kind of setting up to do? Or is that something?
no, no,
Okay.
no. But what I will say is, it's kind of, I'm going to answer a question that could be yes to that in a few minutes. Number one, and this is just me talking, the reason that those UKC papers or those AKC papers on certain few dogs. Well, let's be completely transparent here. All these dogs had UKC papers
Hmm.
at some point. Very few had AKC
Right.
only.
Right.
So they were all of American Pit Bull Terrier. And regardless of which ones were solely descended from that and which weren't, I mean, it to me, it's like you're basically starting a breed writing using another pedigree database for papers using the other breed, the parent breed. You see what I'm saying?
I
Like,
got you.
regardless or not, like, is this confused because I mean, I'll tell you, for a long time, I felt like there were certain strains of American bullies that were pure. Now, and I mean, this is years ago. I
Right.
mean, and 10, 10 plus years ago, I realized that there weren't. You know what I mean? Like, if you put the Bible in front of me right now and said, or 10 years ago, and said, are there any pure strains? And when I say that, of generational American bullies, I'm talking 3 gens, top and bottom, no AKC, Amstaff, UKC show pit bull, ADBA game dog. Are there ones? Is there 10 years ago an American bully that's 3 generations deep, top and bottom, that is pure Amstaff and pure pit bull? I don't think I could put my hand on the Bible and say I feel confident in that. You know what I
Yeah, no,
mean? Like,
I'd agree.
like, but there were certain strains to me that were passable enough. If
Mhm.
that makes sense, like, there were some that I question a lot more than others.
Right. There were
And
definitely some. You're right. No, you're right. Some that were more refined than others. Some were very loose and in their type and things like that. And some were definitely a bit tighter for sure.
it's not just the blue blood; it was the red blood too. Like, people always want to concentrate,
On
and
the
I
blue
get it,
dogs, right?
on the
On those
blue
blue
dogs, and they're
dogs.
like, oh, it's bulldog, oh, it's bulldog. Cuz go back and look at Butthead's Lights Out. That dog is not no bulldog. It is half Neapolitan Mastiff or Connie Corso. You go look at, I mean, there's plenty of dogs back in those pedigrees that are large, California-based Mastiff cross dogs
Hmm.
that they were probably, how old it is. I was probably just starting high school, and you were probably just graduating high. I mean, and to be honest, I graduated in '01. I was probably just getting into middle school when some of these dogs were around. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
because realistically, it was probably the early to mid '90s when, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
But
Right.
people always wanted large blue pit bulls or
Right.
large red dogs, and I mean, you know, I'm not going to say. I'm sure there's press in American bullies at some point, especially the larger ones. But all it takes is, I could take a female I have out here. I, how about this? I could take, or anybody could take. I could take your male Pressa, breed it to my female Staffordshire Bull Terrier, and breed a female off of that to one of my dogs off of my line, or mine and my buddy's line, and then do it 2 more times, and then you're only talking about 12.5% Pressa
Right.
Canary, 12 point, and then the
Right.
Staffordshire Bull Terrier is the same freaking thing. No matter what anybody wants to say, it's the smaller British version of a Amstaff and Pit. You know what I'm saying? So,
Right.
like, but you're not going to be able to tell the 12.5% once it gets that dollar.
Exactly. Right.
Maybe in
Right.
1 out of 6 puppies,
Right. It might
but
pop up somewhere,
yeah,
but for yeah,
yeah,
you're right. For the most part, yeah, you're not going to see it. And guys, and we know that even the bad breeders, they know that. They know how this works because that's how they get paid. It's just a part of the game, unfortunately. But yeah, no, you're definitely right, man. I agree with you there. Like, even there are other breeds that are come under the same scrutiny. The first American bully I ever saw, and I didn't know it was an American bully, was Razor's Edge Throwing Knuckles in a Stratton book.
yeah.
And I remember looking at it, and I was like, man, that's a really good looking pit bull, because that's what I
Hmm.
thought it was, because it was in a book about American pit bull terriers. And I'm just like, man, I'd love to have a dog that looked like that. And then later on, I got information like, oh, well, that's not a pit bull. And I'm like, really? Well, why is it in this book? Like, well, actually, it's an Amstaff and it's this, an American Pit Bull Terrier. And I'm like, well, the Amstaff, there were Colby and what, Tudor. And I'm like, well, if AKC didn't want to, if they had to register the dogs under American Pit Bull Terrier, then we wouldn't have an Amstaff. And we just have AKC American Pit Bull Terriers. I said, so basically, it's kind of putting the dog back together. But at that time, the Staffordshire Bull Terrier had kind of formed its own type. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a bigger, bulkier dog. It was less game, more towards a dog that you could use to actually guard your yard than an American Pit Bull Terrier. You know, a game dog. 9 times out of 10, a game dog ain't protecting shit.
Yeah.
You know, for the most part, you do got, you know, I mean, they can, you know, American Pit Bull Terriers are very, I mean, even Staffordshire Bull Terriers, all those dogs are extremely versatile.
Yeah. I'm so, to me, and Eric and I have talked about this. Eric likes a home guardian. I don't want a home guardian. You know what I mean? And for me, the using an Amstaff Pit Bull, Staffy Bull, any bull and terrier breed that was purposely made for getting down, it was bred for getting down and not to bite people.
People, right?
So you're defying 150 years
of
genetic breeding and
right.
culling to say, look, my dog can bite.
Right.
And I'm not saying, this is just my opinion. You know what I mean? Bite work and sleeve work and all that stuff has never held any interest to me at all.
Me either. I'm not big on that myself.
But everybody wants to do it. You know, it's a free country. I just feel like it's not the best image for this breed, and I feel like there's other breeds more suitable for it. You know, it's like I'm not gonna take a pug out to go on a coon hunt.
Right, for sure. Well, you remember what was that kennel back in the day that started? I think, as far as I know, they were the first people to, I guess, openly start it. From what I remember, was Land of the Giants. You remember they had that dog Diesel, that big dog that was said to be a 100% American Pit Bull Terrier, and he could have been, because if we talk about the Kingfish lines, Kingfish had big dogs, but they weren't in the 100-pound range.
Do you want to hear something interesting else about Kingfish?
Please.
I believe he was 1/4 Amstaff.
And see, and I heard that. I've heard that. I've heard.
I believe it's Tacoma line too, which is the only performance bred Amstaff line in existence till this day. And I've always been a fan. I'm not trying to interrupt you, but I
no, you're fine.
to know that.
No, you're fine.
The Tacoma line, it's a beautiful line of dogs. I'm a big fan of them. You can't tell the difference between them. A few of them are dual registered, and they go and they'll win ADBA conditioning shows as American Pit Bull Terriers because they're the same fucking breed.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, it's a thing that people debate all the time, and it's like politics or religion. I'm never going to convince you.
Of course, right.
But if my parents had my sibling in Scotland,
it's still right.
And me in Columbia, South Carolina,
it's going to be exactly. Exactly.
The passport's different. The blood's the same.
Exactly. You're right. I just did that. I don't know if you watched.
I watched it.
The president and I talked about the Amstaff in there, and that's why I was saying, well, if AKC had been okay with the name, then American Staffordshire, that term would have never existed. Now, if someone can say, hey, well, we crossed these dogs, and that's how we got an Amstaff. Okay, well, you know what? Then that's a different breed. It's the same thing with the Presa versus the Dogo. When I ask people, I say, well, how do you make a Dogo Canario? And they can never tell me. They can never tell me, because there is no such thing as a separation between. It's
Yeah.
like you said, they're coming out of the same
And,
litters.
and thanks for clarifying that for me, because it's so interesting to because I've always wondered that, because you'll see Perro di Presa Canario, Dogo Canario, and I'm like, they look like the same fucking dog. And um, but what I want to touch back on something, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't feel like there were different classes specifically made to take popularity away from other breeds, if that's you were insinuating. But I do feel like the American Bully is the most popular breed in the history of Earth. I,
Yeah. Oh,
I, no,
for sure.
I know that's a very dramatic
No,
thing to
but no,
say.
it is. It
It
is.
is.
It
It
is.
is. It was the right influx, the right time. It was, me and you were the same age. It was a cool cultural movement where you had people from all different aspects link up and go to these events. Um, but I think that the other breeds honestly probably got better because all the Fayweather fans came to the American Bully.
Right.
But that shit's seasonal. If you pay attention now, French Bulldogs getting ruined.
Yeah.
English Bulldogs getting ruined.
Oh my God.
And why is it? Is because so many people, in my opinion, so many people came to the American Bully and thought, "Oh my God,
If I
I'm
can
gonna,
do right, if I
I'm
can
gonna
do
have
this,
I'm gonna have an estate and all these dogs," and then they realize the market is so saturated, it really has to be a labor of love.
right.
Show me one person, and in any breed, but in the American Bully, there seems to be superstars, right? Like
Hmm.
in any breed, but it's like Dynasty. If somebody has this big one name dog, I've never seen somebody with a big one name dog have another big name dog just as big. You see what I'm saying?
Hmm.
So if you have a dog like, or, but you see what I'm saying? Like, Michael Jordan's kid's never going to be Michael Jordan.
Right. They can live
Tom
off the
Brady's
name
top,
to an extent, but it's
yeah,
not going to be. They're not going to get
yeah,
everything that. Right.
yeah. And the thing about the Bully, like, I'm going to a Bully show next weekend. I'm looking forward. 40th birthday, gonna get go hang out or whatever. Um, but to me, there's a few things I have problems with every registry. You and I've talked about that, but I feel like um, it helped a lot of breeds out in the fact that it was so popular. It took all people from other breeds to the American Bully, which
For
is
sure.
unfortunate for the
For
American
sure.
Bully, especially because it's in the development. It's still in development. You know what I mean? But and then you go back and you look at all these things going on now. French Bulldogs, and what's a shame is they're all freaking AKC registered. Like, to me,
Right.
AKC and ADBA have always been the creme de la creme when it comes to breed. Most breeds. Now, some breeds that aren't registered with AKC, of course, UKC, but UKC has single-handedly ruined their American Pit Bull Terrier stock. I had an argument with somebody the other day. I said, name me 10 bloodlines of show American Pit Bull Terriers in the UKC that don't have one drop of American Staffordshire Terrier blood in them. I'll wait. And
Right.
it's no disrespect. There are some, and there's some amazing ones. Don't get me wrong, but most of the blood. Okay, people are going to say Laram, Castillo, Kobe. Yeah, you're right. but who else that doesn't have a questionable? Who
Right.
else that doesn't have Amstaff, and who else that doesn't have Mastiff or Bulldog in them?
Right.
Because most of those exotics that are still registered with the UKC, they're registered under American Pit Bull Terrier.
Right.
You know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah, no, for sure, man. It's yeah, that breed came in and took the world by storm, like you said. I mean, dude, it's my highest running video right now on my channel. I did a 15-minute breed profile on it, and that's almost pushing 9,000 views, and I'm getting like 200 views a day.
Yeah.
And that's like out of all the videos that I've done, that's probably like the most like I just did a whole presser presentation that, in my opinion, should have 10,000 views.
I
But
watched it. I liked it.
and everyone that saw it was like, "Oh my god, that's great! You actually, I've never seen it broken down like that." And I said, "Yeah, unfortunately, it won't outshine my 15-minute American Bully video." Like every time I go to that my analytics on there, it's like 150 more views, 150
Yeah.
more views, 10 more subscribers. And I'm like, yeah, I'm great for all the subscribers, but I'm like, if you're coming here thinking that this is an American Bully channel, you're wrong, because this is probably the only thing you'll ever see. Now, I did do an American Bully interview with a guy, and I felt that after I talked to him that he did have a good program, and he was very transparent about what he had and what he had going on, and I liked it, and it was a good interview, and there was some good information passed on. But I know guys who deal with that breed, and I know that I could never have a conversation with them about dogs like I could with you, because when I start talking to them about what dogs they had before, this, that, and the other, they weren't really dogmen. You just had a
Yeah.
dog here. Now you saw that you could get $5,000 for every puppy, regardless of who you were. So now you're American Bully people. It's kind of like with the reptiles, with the ball python, like, oh, well, I can't sell my scrubs. They're not selling. So I'm going to jump into these ball pythons. Or what I've noticed now is even people who have other breeds, whether they're Pressas or Dogos or Rottweilers, you go further enough down their page and you'll see either those English Bulldogs that are coming in those funky colors or those Frenchies that are coming in those funky colors. And I've talked to a couple of the guys, and one guy was like, man, I really hate these dogs. He's like, but these idiots are willing to pay me $5,000 a pup, but I got really good game dogs, and I'm not really selling those like that. And I've been hearing that a lot, and I'm just like, man, but there are a few American Bully breeders who are doing right by the breed and are not just out here for fame, and for money. But yeah, the way those things sell, man, you would think they were curing AIDS or curing cancer, like when you get them, because you can't keep them in, and it's like you said, a lot of people were like, oh, Connie Corso fell off, so I'm just going to go get American Bullies, or I can't sell my presses, I'm going to get American Bullies. Like, I'm thankful that some breeds didn't get that popular. Like the presses never been as popular as people think that it is. And I think a lot of people think that it's popular now who have presses because they have presses. Well, most of the people you follow are Presa Canario people. So it seems like they're popular, but they're really not that. They never were really that popular. The Connie Corso, if you remember, the Connie Corso had a long standing run around the same time that the Presa Canario,
especially on the East Coast.
Over. Yeah, those dogs were everywhere. Everybody wanted one. The first blue dog I ever saw and I ever owned was a Connie Corso. That dog, like everybody wanted to see that dog. I've never seen a blue dog. It never this, it never that. And then I tell them what it was, and they're like, "Oh, I heard of that, the Cane Corso." And I'm like, "No, it's a Connie Corso." And they're like, "Oh, okay. Was that's not the same dog?" And I was like, "No, it is. You're just, it's not saying the name right." And it's amazing, man, what has happened since me and you have come up to where things are now. Because now, and I want to get your opinion on this. It seems like papers are kind of becoming less important because you don't know what people are doing on their yard if they're not telling you. Like if you're making band dogs and you're not telling people, then that becomes a problem. Now, if you are saying,
well, I think that's essentially what. I mean, I don't think. I mean, you put two and two together. That's essentially band dogs were created in the early '90s, or bulldog crosses, not all of them, but some of them, enough to make an impact. And then they flew under the suit. I mean, you know what I mean? I didn't mean to interrupt you
No,
on
you're
that, but
fine. That's
I was just saying, like, if 15-year-old me could look in Dog World magazine and say that dog's not a pit bull and that dog's not a pit bull or Amstaff, then shouldn't a 25 or 30-year-old know that? It's
I mean, yeah,
looking at
you
the
would
same
think that,
magazine.
but now the
Yeah.
DNA test is
Oh,
king now. You know, that's king, and we talked about that several times about
yeah.
DNAs, and
Yeah.
you know, so no, feel free to speak on that as well, because like I said, that it seems like that DNA test now is outweighing the paperwork.
Yeah. I don't have much stock in the DNA test, and I'm not going to name any DNA test, but one of the most popular ones. I had a dog that I had DNA tested, didn't send it a picture, did not send in what breed it was. It's 5 generations of my friend and I breeding on the top side, and 5 generations of another friend of mine who I bought the Dane from on the mother side. It is an American bully. It goes back to my American Staffordshire Terrier that I talked about
Mm-hmm.
2 times. Breaking down genetic wise, it should be 18.75% American Staffordshire Terrier on the paperwork, right? I mean, on the DNA test, it comes back 100% American bully. How do I feel about that? Is, well, you got a B minus. It's not failing, but if people are wanting to take this stuff to the bank and put it down as law and Bible, you can't do that. It's still a crapshoot. I've taken 2 DNA tests for myself. The results are close to one another, but they are different.
Mm-hmm.
And they also update every year.
Right.
For instance, this is no different than a dog breed. If a German person moves to, let's just say, Argentina in the 1940s, or Canada or wherever, their grandchildren or great grandchildren by now are 3 generations deep in Argentine or Canadian culture. They're Canadian with,
Mm-hmm.
but if you give them a DNA test, they're still going
Gonna
to
say
show
right.
Germany. But what if that German grandparent was part Czech? Well, now you're getting into complicated stuff where it's like, where's the stopping point and the starting point for your breed Rolodex?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Like you were saying about presses, guys, I'm not a press expert. There's no reason for me to be. So that's my disclaimer. But you're talking about the shepherd that is the basis of the breed, the Madero,
The Majero, yeah.
Majero,
Majoero, yeah.
Majero. I'm sorry,
It's all
but
good.
it it's one of those things where it's like, if they can't get if a breed's still being developed, i.e., the American Bulldog had a 1/8 rule for the longest time, or 7/8, 1/8 rule for the longest time. You know, the Presa was in development, the American Bully's in development. What makes me feel like they can tell the difference between an AKC Amstaff, a UKC Pit Bull, and an ADBA Pit Bull? I don't feel like they can. They maybe can half the time. Half the time isn't it's not consistent enough. And when you're, I know somebody with Whopper and Camelot dogs that their dog came back 100% pit bull, terrier, not American bully.
Hmm.
And this is a line bred dog, and these dogs are 95 to 110 pounds. And it's like these dogs have Dog de Bordeaux in them from 2 different lines, and American Bulldog, and God knows what else. They're great looking. I might use them for an outcross for American Bullies, but I'm just saying, like, and then you see Merle American Bullies coming back 100% American Bully, and it's like, Well, we know that shit's a
Right.
fairy
It's no,
tale.
yeah, there's no way.
And I'm not saying the science could never get there, but I feel like there has to be some breakthroughs in breed identification, because if all they're depending on is Cayenne sending in stock from a Staffordshire Bull Terrier or American Bullies or Rain for Presa Canarios, well then what? Where's the relevance in that, or not the relevance, but that that doesn't seem like a surefire method, if
Right.
that
No,
makes
I
sense.
feel you. I'd like to see the dogs that they use to determine, what is what. Like I'd like to see the dogs that they took the original DNA from for the Pressa to compare. If I were to send my DNA in to compare to, because I
Yeah,
might be like, man, that ain't no Pressa. You know what I mean? Like, what
yeah.
is that? Like you compare my. So that's what, like, now. So no, I agree with you. Plus,
And what about lawsuits? What about lawsuits? If I go buy a fucking Dogo Argentino and it comes back 2% English Bull Terrier or Great Dane, am I now able to go to this nice Dogo Argentino kennel that I just bought this dog from and say, hey, your shit's your shit's fucked up?
right.
Because to me, it would.
It's not what you bought. So
No, I'm going to take that. But to me, like, I wouldn't even take another test at this point right now for any of my dogs. Like, it's just, to me, it's irrelevant. It's inconclusive. Yeah, it was close, but it's. I don't want an estimation. I want an exact fucking. And because people are treating it exact, they're not treating it like an exact estimation. You know what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
it's like halfway doing a breeding program, but but you're breeding half-assed dog. You're expecting excellence with mediocre fucking effort,
Mhm.
and that's how these DNA tests are treated. It's like, or the breed ones at least. And I'm just, if you have a rescue or something like that, I definitely get it. But if like some people could end up getting real pissed if there's not a disclaimer on that thing saying they're not 100% correct.
Mhm.
Because I mean, what happens when you do spend $10,000 on a fluffy Merle English Bulldog and the shit comes back and it's whatever?
Chihuahua.
Or you know, you've hit me to the Pressa history. What happens if I get a Pressa from you or Joe Schmo and it comes back 2% Neo, 2% Dog de Bordeaux, 15% this. Like,
Right. Both
does
dogs
that
were
make?
used in the
Yeah, yeah,
creation
yeah,
of the
yeah.
presser. So
But yeah, that's why I
right,
named them, because I
right.
was listening to your video and I was like, well, point does it start and stop?
Right.
Because it could fuck a lot of people up that are selling good dogs and pure dogs, because the it, the results aren't 100%, is all I'm
Right,
saying.
for sure. No, I mean, because everybody's program is different, and some people's programs aren't really programs, and some people have real programs. So,
Yeah,
depending on how your dog is being bred, you might get those DNA tests that you were saying. Like, and they're like, "Well, I've never crossed my dogs, and
yeah.
as far as I know, the people that I've been getting my dogs from haven't crossed them." Okay, well, maybe they haven't, but were they doing any line breeding to even solidify their genes, or were they just scatter breeding
Yeah.
these presses that they got from the islands? Who, I don't know what they're doing over in the islands these days, but I can tell you for sure that when Bill Thifault was around and Richard Kelly and those guys, Bill told me that they were buying American Bulldogs from him because he was one of the only people, not the only, but one of the few people who had solid brindle American Bulldogs. And he said the guys from the islands were hitting him up for his dogs all the time to breed them
And
into their presses to make their heads bigger. So, and this way, and he told me this in 99.
yeah,
So in 99, that's 10 years after the standard was set. but they started the breeding program, and he got permission to do it in 74. First litter came in 1977. You look at those dogs in 77, they don't look anything like the presses today because that was the first breeding. So like you said,
The same thing with the American Bulldog. The American Bulldog by the National Kennel Club, they had a 7/8 rule. So basically, I could have a 7/8 American Bulldog and a 1/8 Pit Bull, 1/8 Bull Mastiff, or 1/8 whatever,
and they consider it American
and they
Bulldog.
consider it Bulldog. American Bulldog was never. I mean, I like American Bulldogs, and I don't want to sell them short because they're amazing dogs.
For
and
sure.
I think sometimes I might subconsciously sell them short because they are here, and I'm like, oh, Dogo Argentino, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
but they had the 7/8 rule for a long time, and I feel like on the performance end, I kind of get it. You know what I mean? Like, it's a working breed. It's not really a prance around the showroom breed. I'm glad that they closed that. I mean, I do think they closed it a few years ago. But, the interesting thing that I think that you and I have realized is other than the Bull and Terrier breeds, and I'm not going to say every Mastiff or Molosser breed, but a lot of those shits, and I say shit, a lot of those breeds are recreations.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are trying to sell the dream that this is a 5,000-year-old Roman warrior dog,
Yeah.
or and it's like the my favorites, the Alafaha Blue Blood Bulldog, because I'm born in Augusta, Georgia, 1983. I've gotten every fucking classified paper from fucking third grade till I was 30. You know how many times I saw Alafa Blue Blood Bulldogs in a Georgia classified ad? One time.
I would say probably none. If so, I'm surprised that you said even one.
And the most mind blowing thing is, because when I used to go to these hog catches, one of the guys said, "Man, all it is an American Bulldog crossed with an Alafaha. I mean, crossed with a Catahoula, maybe a little bit of blackmouth cur and pit." He said, "That's all it." And I'm not taking anything away from them. They're great looking dogs, but selling a fake history has always kind of bothered me.
Right.
Because I even looked at the website one time, and it was like the Alafaha was the foundation of the American Pit Bull Terrier and the American Bulldog. I was like, now that's a crock of shit. You know what I mean?
For sure. Because I can't remember his name, but I know I read this somewhere in the book, and he said that the lady, I can't remember her name either, but who started with these Alapalas bought American Bulldogs from him.
Yeah.
He said it flat out that she bought like 4 or 5 dogs from him. And then, a few years later, that Alapala, this Merle dog, popped up. I'm a bit familiar with those dogs. I knew a couple guys that had them when I was living in Ohio. There was also a kennel in Monroe, Ohio, called Twin Elms, and there were 2 twin sisters, and they had Alapala Blue Blood Bulldogs. And I went to their kennel because it was just like right down the street, and saw their dogs and whatnot. Not something that I was ever interested in, but just because it was a breed I had never been around, and we drove past this kennel so many times. I was like, man, let's stop here, see if they're home and see if we can check their dogs out. And, we did, and they let us, go in the back and check them out. I mean, and they were good looking dogs. Like I said, nothing that I wanted. I was all American Pit Bull Terrier at that time, because that was the most affordable dog for me. I wanted Pressas and Corsos and things like that. But at that time, it was my brother had American Pit Bull Terrier, so I had American Pit Bull Terrier.
Yeah.
That's just what it was. But also I think it's because we talked about the band dogs, man. And this will probably be the last because we'll go over an hour. We'll probably go another 15 minutes because I want to talk about this band dog thing with you. Now, maybe you'll agree, maybe you'll disagree. When I came up around the same time, so I should just say when we came up,
I
The only
agree.
band dog
I agree.
was Swinford. That was it was either a Neo into a pit bull or a pit bull into a Neo. And I'm gonna do a breed profile on the Swinford band dog versus the current band dog. I think what happened is when they got the definition, well, like band dog just means a dog that is chained up. And I think people took that and ran with it like, okay, well, hell, I can just cross anything and we're just going to call it a band dog. Everything's going to be a band dog now. Well, in that sense, then a Presa Canario is a band dog. A lot of these other breed, American Bully would be a band dog. And now you have guys, they're just throwing anything together, like, oh, such and such band dogs or this, that, and the other. And I think you're familiar with Lamone from Colossal Mastiff. He did an interview for Eric as well. He's got his own breed called the Colossal Mastiff, which at that time, well, I can't say at the time, but it's a band dog with a standard. It's not just some stuff he threw together. I think he's like 11 or 12 generations deep,
Yeah.
breeding consistent, with that dog. It's somebody that I talk to on a regular basis. So yeah, how did the band dog movement, man? Where do you think that band dog movement is going? Because most of these guys aren't putting standards to their dogs from what I see.
I don't. How can I say it? Yes, I came up in the Carl Simic books. My idea of what a band dog is a game dog to a Neo or an English Mastiff, maybe a Bull Mastiff, but a traditional band dog to me, and one that I would probably only care to would be one of those because it would be like, man, this is what Swinford had.
Right.
This is what Carl Simic remember. Now the other ones are fine. I mean, I really like Mr. Robinson's dogs. Um, I think the breeding Eric did is going to be an interesting one because let's face it, back then Borbles weren't around here like that.
Right.
And Borbles look. I've never seen one in person, but they look more athletic than a bull mastiff, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe less athletic than a American bulldog. You know what I mean? Like they're, yeah, I like them. I think they're probably the largest, heaviest athletic breed
Yeah,
there
they're a
is.
heavy. They're a heavy bone
Yeah,
dog, man. They really
yeah. So
are.
I think Eric's breeding is going to be interesting. But to me, the traditional band dog is, and now I know the definition. There's like tethered dog or whatever like that,
Mm-hmm.
but I think a lot of people are just trying to mix dogs and cash in. I mean, if you want to know the truth, I'm not saying
Yeah.
everybody. Anybody who has a program, I don't care if you're breeding Pomeranians. If you're doing it well and you're passionate about it, and we still speak the same language. Like
Mm-hmm.
like so, like the if they don't have a standard, I mean, is it to say that I necessarily have a standard. A breed standard. I know what I'm going to keep and not keep, and I
Right.
know generally what sizes I have. But every once in a while, I'll throw a bigger one. Like I don't think you have to have a written standard. I think it would probably help because it's kind of like a vision board. You know
Right.
what I mean? As funny as that sounds, but um, no, I think a lot of people are just mixing dogs to, uh, put them on Hoobly for 500 to 1,500 and say
Right.
band dog. Say band dog is so much prettier than saying
Mutt
pit
or
bull,
or
pit
pit
bull,
bull
pit
cross
bull
or
cross with Neo, $2,500
right.
band dog, and then you call it the King Dingaling Mastiff, and then it'll sell for twenty five
Right. No,
hundred.
for sure.
Or the old regional bulldog, or you know what I mean. It's just it, a lot of I don't know. I mean, because I can't speak for anybody else. I mean, but it's band dog has almost been overused, like the term Old English Bulldog, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
My idea of an Old English Bulldog is probably pretty similar to yours, David Levitt stuff.
Yeah.
Renaissance stuff came after. I still love it. I mean, I love the Renaissance dogs. I know is probably a well, I know is different genetic makeup, and then you had like Hermes, which are the bigger Mastiff-ier ones, I think. But there was only a couple lines. But you go now, and there's the Old English Bulldogs is diverse as the American Bully.
Right.
David Levitt quit calling his dogs. He started the breed
Right.
Old English Bulldogs. He calls them Levitt Bulldogs now.
Right.
So it's one of those deals. If people, I feel like having a name on a breed or having a name on puppies is this. It's a fucking card game
Mm-hmm.
to not having papers. And I'm not saying papers are everything, but it's like if I can't put a name, like this is a breed, and there's nothing with breeds in development. The American Bully is
Right.
a breed
Oh,
in
for
development.
sure.
You know, many of the breeds we've touched on tonight, other than the Bull and Terriers, have been breeds in development over the past 60 years. Like there's nothing wrong with it. And but it also is to kind of smoke and mirrors you away from the fact that this is a prototype.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? I don't know.
I definitely agree with some of what you're saying. I think the problem now is money is the problem now. I understand, like, everybody, I mean, unless you've got 50 acres and you're just rich or you've got an abundance of food, you can't keep everything. You know what I mean? So obviously you're going to sell dogs and but I think guys like me and you have already realized is that, well, I ain't really making no profit off of these puppies. I'm kind of just getting the money back that I spent. Whereas some of these other guys, like the Frenchie guys and the American Bullies and these English Bulldogs and some of these other breeds out here, I mean, they're trying to knock a profit. You know what I mean? And they're cutting, I've watched them on YouTube. Like, they're cutting, they don't even have a real yard or a program. Like, and they're cutting every corner they can to make sure that they make that $1,500 to $2,500 profit on every single puppy. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, man, that's crazy. Like, I ain't never, and I've made money off reptiles profit wise. I ain't never made $1 selling dogs ever.
Yeah.
Like every dollar that came in, when you go down your list of dog food, kennel repairs, if you're going to the show, it really depends.
Dog repairs.
Dog repairs. Right.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
right. Yeah. You're not, you'll be lucky to break even.
yeah.
You know what I mean? With the money that you spend in. And that just depends on how deep you're going. Now, if you start going overseas and shit, all that stuff costs. Then you got to find hotels that'll let you keep the dogs. And
well, I've checked about getting a dogo shipped here one time. Just, I mean, because you and I've talked. I like the dogo. I think I'm taking more with the Pampa dog, which is the Dogo Amstaff cross that I've shown you. But yeah, I mean, but I think that if you have to be in a breed and love it or the process of it, because there are breeds, it's not always going to be popular.
right.
You know what I mean?
No, for sure. Sure.
Like, I don't care where you are in this country. If Regulators comes on at a fucking
right.
bar,
that song.
everybody's going to sing it. If Freebird comes on, everybody's going to sing it. Like, there's just these songs, and there's only a couple, and that is kind of like these dogs. Is like there's only a couple of timeless, and I mean, dog, because every dog has its day, and that day comes pretty quick in the dog business.
Right.
And I would rather have one dog I love than 10 I'm trying to push out puppies that I fucking detest.
Right.
To stay breeding the other stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is so fickle. I mean, like I said 10 times, you and I are the same age. I mean, in the 80s, it was German Shepherds and Dobies. Early 90s, Rottweilers. Late mid '90s, started doing Amstaff's pits. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
there's gonna be something other than the American Bully come up
Oh, for sure. It's
at
at some point. Yeah.
some point, you know, and but you've already seen it, in my opinion, because you saw such a flux from the bully people to French bulldogs.
Right. I think
You
what
know,
you're describing, and I never thought about this before in this sense, but I think what you're describing is, and it's what you said is, people have a general love for dogs, but they don't have a breed that they really love. So because they're like, oh, I'm a dog person, I'm gonna go get Frenchies. I'm gonna go get this because I know I can sell them. But you don't, like you said, you don't really like Frenchies. You don't really like American bulldogs. I mean, American bullies. Because just last year you had a yard full of Connie Corso, or you had a
yeah,
yard full of presses, and you couldn't sell them. And now but those American bullies are moving. So it's like, yeah, you like dogs, but you don't have a breed that means anything to you. You know
yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah, yeah.
And
Go ahead.
no, go ahead. No, because I was just gonna say, like, when you have that, you're not going to be as pressed to even be. You're going to want to try to have some exclusiveness to what you're doing. You're not going to be breeding all the time. You're really going to be trying to keep the best stuff on your yard and things like that, rather than, well, I'm having a litter. I need
Yeah.
deposits. Give me those deposits. Da 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 da. That's what you see these days.
Well, I'm pretty conservative when it comes to my views on dogs, and you know, I feel, me personally, from my experiences, I don't have room in my mind to obsess over 20 breeds.
Mm-hmm.
I've got Amstaff Pit Bull, Staffordshire Bull Terrier, American Bully, that family, and then I have a couple, but those are my main components. So, like, the idea of hopping from, even though I consider Pressa Corso, I mean, distant, in the same region of family, of the pit bull type dogs. I just don't have. I don't want a German Shepherd. I don't want a Labradoodle. I don't want a
Right.
Maltese. Like, and I don't see how you can just hop around from different breeds. That takes a lot of money.
Right.
That takes a lot of, unless you're giving the dogs away, or you're not getting the other ones for free. So financial loss
Right.
on some type of aspect. And then, I seriously, when I was, going down on my American Bully stock, and said, I think I'm gonna, you know, keep a one or two, but I'm gonna, gravitate more towards the Staffordshire Bull Terriers. I said, I beat myself up and thought about it for probably 6 to 8 months. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
just really, like, this is X amount of years. This is, I don't even care about generations. Like, but I mean, I think it was 5 to 7 on one of the dogs, two of the dogs, and whatever. It could be 7 generations of shit. You know what I mean? I'm not saying it was, because it wasn't, but I think people put a little too much stock into that sometimes as well.
Mhm.
But you, sitting there, it it shouldn't be an easy decision to change your whole yard,
Right. It's
unless
about
you're
consistency. You got to
un,
be
un, unless your yard has problems, which mine didn't. I
right.
was
I
just
I
coming at a
agree.
crossroads where I felt like, is the American Bully turning into something slowly or quickly that is a little too bully for me? That's the only, and like I said, I go to shows still. You know what I mean? But
Right.
is the American Bully, for me personally, turning into something a little too bully and un, uh, unathletic, less athletic than I want it to be, you
Right.
know? And, and then, I was just like, I'm going to keep a couple around for, you know, staying around and to keep that going. But I'm not going to have this massive amount like I have before of 12 dogs or 10 dogs. Yeah, there's no point in it. And plus, like you said, you have to sell them. And when people want Merle English bulldogs with tails, it that's not what I got. You know what
Right.
I mean? So, but but yeah, I mean, I don't think I think if you switch dogs that easy and it doesn't take some really, unless your dogs or your bloodline or the blood you're working with has some big issue,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you should neuter it and get rid of it. But if your dog, I mean, my dogs, I got rid of a couple of yearlings, and I got one was a jip and one was a stud, and then I got rid of a female. I don't keep a big yard here,
Mm-hmm.
and so, but yeah, it just. I mean, I really proed and con, and I was just like, man, this is something that like I'm feeling like, and then every single one of my friends that knows me is like, I I thought you were going to do that 5 years ago. You know what I mean? They're like, I thought you were going to do that 5 years ago, and and so it. I mean, like I said, I'm going to be interested to see how the American Bully goes because I don't think that you get. I don't. I don't think it can reach its potential of excellence with three different classes or four different classes for the same breed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't feel like. I don't feel like. I feel like Pocket and Standard are pretty close to one another, looks wise. But then you get into XL, and I almost feel like it should be its own breed. Um, I feel like it's actually built a nice built XL is a lot more athletic than, in my opinion, than some of these smaller dogs. But I mean, I'm generalizing now.
Well, I mean, what you're saying is spot on, man, and I hope people can definitely appreciate it because basically what we're talking about is how do I know if you're a consistent breeder if every 2 years you got something new? I'm not going to trust you. I'm not going to trust your dogs. I'm not going to, I'm not even going to look at me personally. I'm not going to look
Yeah,
at you. You know what I mean? Like you were here, you were here, you were here, you were here. I'm gonna be like that. You're not a real breeder. You're just, I don't really know. I guess you're just here to try to make some money or a name for yourself. Like, you gotta, it's like you said, man, if you got a program and you've been working on it for years, why would you not stick to it, to
yeah,
improve it? Because it's like you said, unless your dogs have some issues, some health issues that are just like, hey, look, yeah, I can't do this anymore. And this is why, then that's totally understandable. But unfortunately, likes and subs and things like that and followers kind of rule the animal industry, and it's not just with the dogs and it's not just with the reptiles. It's pretty much with everything now, man. If you've got certain amount of followers, you're going to sell more dogs. Like
well,
I
I know you're into reptiles. I actually went to Ripticon last weekend. I
remember
took
you
my
were
son
telling me
to,
you were going to go. Yeah.
but you see it in parrots. I was
Hmm.
I one you. I don't think I've told you. I used to be obsessed with parrots when I was a kid.
Me
I
too.
had a Congo African gray. There's two different types of African grays. The Congo, which has the red tail, then you have the Timna African gray, which has the orange tail,
Hmm.
a little smaller. I had a Congo, but they're starting to come in morphs now. You're starting to see white piebald.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures of some of those things.
Uh,
Even some of the cockatiels and things like
yeah,
that are starting to yeah.
yeah, and then you're starting to see because macaws can interbreed. You can breed a hyacinth macaw, I believe, I know red and gold's military macaws, severe macaws. They can all just
Hmm.
procreate, and so you're getting all these crosses, which a lot of them look cool. You know what I mean? But I'm sure they're going for $30,000.
Oh yeah, yeah.
For
The birds are
yeah,
already expensive as
yeah,
it is.
yeah.
So Yeah, for sure. No, but a lot of animals are, even when you go back and look at the history of the tiger, the white tiger. I mean, that was a big deal, and the crazy thing about it is it's like I think it's like one, and I don't so people don't quote me on the number. I don't know the exact number, I can't remember, but I think it's like one in every like 10,000 or maybe even be higher than that. But it's a far ratio to get a white tiger. And so they were basically breeding these tigers over and over and over, and they were never getting the white tigers. What was happening to those other tigers? Well, they were euthanizing them, just breeding them. And we got a white tiger. So now, I need $50,000, $100,000 for this white tiger that it took me 60 breedings to get, And so, and and I tell people all the time, is like, I will never say what you just said. I will never say that they don't look cool, these morphs with the reptiles, because they do. But then what we're forgetting is genetically, a lot of them are not cool. And I just can't, and that's kind of why I backed away from the reptile world, is because I just can't justify spending that kind of money on reptiles. One, because there's no insurance. And two, I just don't trust what those guys are telling me anymore. I know that they're doing things that are unethical, on purpose, out of convenience, brother and sister pairings and things like that, or selling you a brother and sister pair, even though they know I asked for unrelated. But shit, Kyan, we're an hour and a half in, which is good. So we're going to cut this one short for now. Okay. We're definitely going to do a part 2. So just everybody, I will have Kyan's information when I post this. It'll probably post either tomorrow or the day after. I'm going to have all your info there, all your links there. For everyone, again, I think we're up to like 250 subs now. I appreciate that. I really do. Everybody that's been tuning into the channel. Still be on the lookout for the Sport of Kings, or AKA the history of dog fighting. I'm still working on that. Like, it's going to be, it's a lot of work to do this right, to do that video right. It's probably going to be done in like 4 parts. I'm probably going to get in trouble for it on YouTube, but whatever. I'm going to put it up anyway. But so be on the lookout for that. I got other interviews, other topics coming up. This is an interview. Me and Kyan have been trying to do this for a while. We keep missing each other.
Yeah.
So
we both have little ones.
Right. So yeah, like I said, man, you guys make sure you check out Kyan's Instagram. He's got an interview with Eric Lawton as well. You can always check that out if you haven't already. Which is, like I said, why I wanted his interview to be a little bit different than that one, just because me and this guy talk a lot. So I felt that we could have just a general conversation about canines in general. And this would just be part 1. You'll definitely see him again. Still trying to put together a round table. I just got to find, the right guys to do it with, in a day that works for everybody. So we can all sit down, on that day and talk for an hour, hour and a half. But we appreciate you for tuning in. Yeah, and that's it, man. We're gonna sign off until next time. So Dark
Thank
Silver,
you for having me.
Of course, man. Of course. You're definitely gonna see this guy again. You're gonna see him more than twice, I'm sure. So me and him, we got to start talking more than we were in the beginning. But then it's starting to get warm. He's working. I've got work to do here. So we appreciate you tuning in, and peace out.
Have a good one.
And that wraps up another episode of NWA Conning Corsos. Thank you for being a part of our Conning Corso community. Remember, you can stay connected with us beyond the podcast. Find us on all major media platforms by searching for NWA Conning Corsos. Whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube, just hit that follow button to join the conversation and get the latest updates. If you have a burning question or want to apply to be a guest on our show, we'd love to hear from you. Simply shoot us an email at nwaconningcorsos@gmail.com. And if you're a business interested in becoming a sponsor, reach out to us at the same email address. For more resources, exclusive content, and links to all our social media profiles, visit our website at nwaconningcorsos.com. It's your go-to destination for everything dogs. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we can't wait to bring you more exciting episodes where we explore the fascinating world of dogs.